corporate job that I've ever had, and the training was straight up jarring. Before getting into all the procedures for the job, I was shown a video about the company's mission statement. I was expecting something about peace, love, and positivity or some other shit, but instead, their mission was a lot more, well, evil. After getting through the long history of the company buying up thousands of local chains and rebranding them, their stated goal, above all other things, was complete brand loyalty. This concept isn't a new thing, and companies like Apple absolutely dominate the market through brand loyalty. If you can get the public to trust your products, hell, even become fans of them, there's basically nothing that can stop you. This concept is the end goal of most corporations, but there's few worse places for it to happen than good old gaming. Because they all have a certain style to them, these companies, important word, have developed massive fan bases who believed for years that they can do no wrong. I'd like to help change that. I thought about how to do this video in a number of ways, but I've decided that the best course to reveal the sins of these companies is to get straight up biblical. It's time, my friends, for the 7 deadly sins. Now, I get that if you like some of these developers, you might find my criticism a little distasteful. So, to ease us in, let's look at the most collectively hated. Representing the greed of the corporate world, let me introduce to you Electronic Arts. But hey, before I get into those bad companies, let's talk about the company who's paying me and its users and is also good, Honeygain. Hey, weird question, have you ever wanted free money? See, Honeygain is a passive income app that borrows and sells a small chunk of your internet and, in exchange, pays you for it. The internet given is used on a number of things, like ad verification, a process that makes sure an ad is being displayed to a real person correctly. Now, you won't be paying your bills with the money you get, but you might be able to pay for something like the limited edition Shroud Dual Skin PUBG crate, the only microtransaction I've ever bought. I've been using Honeygain myself to see if I wanted to represent them, and so far I'm definitely enjoying it. It doesn't take personal data, has incredibly positive reviews on websites like Trustpilot, and is pretty quick to set up. If you want to sign up for Honeygain on one or more devices, use my promo code in the description below for a completely free 5 extra bucks. So, one more time, be sure to download Honeygain with my promo code TheCursedJudge today and get 5 bucks extra. Anyways, onto the companies that don't give me money in any sort of way, and are also bad. As I said, we'll be starting with EA, because what better way is there to start with a company rated worst in America by Consumerist in 2012? Wait, I actually read that wrong. Apparently it was rated worst company in America in 2012 and 2013. Damn. Yet another 2-time champion in the world of gaming. By the way, this was the first time any company ever got the title 2 times in a row. A poll that includes companies like Apple, Walmart, Bank of America, AT&T, and more. This was due to a number of reasons. A big contributor was the absolute failure that was Mass Effect 3's ending. The finale to a beloved game series that EA somehow managed to completely fuck up. However, EA is an overachiever. See, they might not have the money of something like Walmart, but they pack a lot of greed in those 2 tiny letters. Speaking of Mass Effect 3, our darling company decided to release the game with something called Day 1 DLC, aka a content patch that was made alongside development, only to be locked behind a paywall to people who literally just bought the game. Even worse, it's not like the expansion was something unnecessary or extra. It adds an entirely new character and storyline, which are almost essential to get the full story the game is trying to tell. A story which, I should say again, they fucked up so badly that it ruined the entire franchise. Real innovators, doing it before Game of Thrones ever did. This is just Mass Effect 3. There are so many more incidents from EA's laundry list of sins. I'll do one more. Let's talk about EA Sports. The slogan for this division of the company is "It's in the game." The thing in this said game is football. And a lawsuit. In 2008, a civil suit was filed towards Electronic Arts accusing them of breaking antitrust laws, something that greedy companies tend to do. The accusation was specifically about EA signing an exclusive contract with the NFL, NCAA, and Arena Football League, barring any other companies from using the players' identities in their game. And what exactly was EA's airtight defense presented to the court of law? They argued that the football players' identities used in the game were entirely, quote, incidental. Like a fucking intern tripped and then coded the models' names, stats, numbers, and team affiliations into the fucking game. Whoops! Sorry about that. A series of lawsuits were settled 5 years later in 2013. This time, the multiple lawsuits all surrounded the company using hundreds of thousands of people's identities in the NCAA without their permission. Both the first lawsuit and these all ended with a settlement, a total estimated to be around $40 million. Dang. A real big chunk out of their $5 billion in revenue. Because the truth of the matter is, companies like EA can just get away with this shit. Someone might file a lawsuit every now and then, but by the time it's happened, they've done 20 other things that someone won't. and they'll keep doing it because they love money and hate competition. I could also get into the Sims games having hundreds of dollars worth of DLCs, all the loot box stuff, microtransactions in every fucking game, but I can't. I cannot make this entire video an EA video, okay? The pure rap sheet, both in quantity and quality, outlists every other game developer in existence, which is impressive because all of them want money. But EA, they want money the most. I will gladly bestow the sin of greed to the one, the only, Electronic Arts. While some companies are a lot more mask-off with their corruption, others like to sweep it entirely under the rug, only to be revealed later. On July 20th of 2021, this year, the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing filed a lawsuit against a formerly beloved video game company, one that's been the subject of wide-scale criticism over the past several years. This lawsuit was the cork popping off of a long series of incidents continually building pressure against the company, where we were finally shown just how disgusting a place it truly was. The lawsuit is over sexual harassment, and the subject of it is Blizzard Entertainment. And boy, is it a shit show. Borrowing from a Polygon article, the DFEH's report from that investigation, dated June 24, 2021, found that Activision Blizzard discriminated against female employees in terms and conditions of employment, including compensation, assignment, promotion, termination, constructive discharge, and retaliation. The investigation also found that Activision Blizzard's female employees were subject to sexual harassment, and that the company's leadership failed to take all reasonable steps to prevent unlawful discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. And in the weeks that followed that lawsuit being filed, Blizzard proved that. First, it's important to mention that not only were women endlessly harassed, but guys weren't safe from it either. Personnel manager Kevin Myers stated that he's been the subject of sexual harassment, quote, since his first day back in 2012. In what was commonly described as a frat boy culture, there were long-running games around senior managers playing gay chicken with employees, where the first to grab another guy's junk wins, which is, of course, widely known as professional workplace behavior. CEO Bobby Kotick spoke out 7 days after the story broke, in his statement saying, "I want to recognize and thank all those who have come forward in the past and in recent days. I so appreciate your courage. Every voice matters, and we will do a better job of listening now and in the future." Now that I've been caught. He didn't say that last part, but he wouldn't have even meant it if he did. Because 2 days after that statement, Blizzard hired an infamous union-busting firm in order to make sure that the voices of their employees were heard as little as possible, because the treatment of human beings comes second to Blizzard's bottom line. The lawsuit only mentioned 2 people by name, Blizzard's president J. Allen Brack and senior creative director of World of Warcraft Alex Afrasiabi. Because only these 2 people were mentioned, everyone in the company went into a mad scramble to distance themselves from them, only to have a picture released from BlizzCon 2013. This photo is Alex and a number of other employees hanging out in what was called the Cosby Suite, the name for Alex's hotel room. The fucking Cosby Suite. And despite their attempts to distance themselves, dozens of employees from the bottom to the top have been exposed for their part in this systematic culture of fuckery. Even the now former top HR rep Jesse Meshuk resigned after reports of an incident where after a woman reported that someone physically assaulted her, Jesse said that they were surprised, quote, she wasn't crying or more hysterical. And then Jesse followed up on the report by saying that the male co-worker that assaulted her is, quote, really sorry and he really wants to work at Blizzard. And he says you were really friendly with him. Christ. This isn't all the stuff that's come out, but anything more would just be beating a female dead horse. The truth of the matter is that Blizzard just doesn't care about the human beings that work for them. Just like with their defense of China a few years prior, Blizzard will do, say, or ignore anything so long as it means they keep racking in money. So with a continuously spiraling look into the lawless work culture of Blizzard and the higher-ups' participation or willing blindness to what was happening, I would like to award Blizzard with the deadly sin of lust.
It's crazy.
That section was a lot, so I'm going to move into a sin that I consider to be on the bottom of the deadly sins tier list. Let's talk about Valve. Valve used to be known for its multiple iconic series, namely TF2, Counter-Strike, Half-Life, Dota, Left 4 Dead, Portal, and Garry's Mod, with almost all of them being on their equally iconic Source engine. Such a lineup is incredibly impressive, if we were in 2013. See, 2013 was the release of Dota 2, and then after that, Half-Life Alyx was good for people who owned VR headsets. Dota Underground I heard was good, but it was just an official version of a game mode that was already created by the community. Other than that, 5 total games have been released in the meantime. Counter-Strike Online 2 was a game released soon after Dota 2, focused towards Asian markets, where all the models and sounds of CSGO were redone by the South Korean studio Nexon. They then released a zombie spin-off of Counter-Strike Online 2, which doesn't even have its own Wikipedia page. They released an arcade cabinet for Left 4 Dead 2, which is just Left 4 Dead 2 but worse and on an arcade cabinet. In 2016 they made The Lab, an auxiliary game meant to push their new Vive VR headsets. And finally, they released Artifact, a brand new and exciting card game based on Dota 2. Yeah, play that one clip. Yeah. Yet, despite making basically no real games over the course of 7 straight years, Valve and Gabe Newell are doing more than fine, with Gabe having an estimated $4 billion in net worth, and all of this is due to a little application called Steam. Now, Steam was started in 2003 as a way for Valve to host their own games for people to play, before quickly becoming a host of any games that the internet had to offer. This was an objectively good service for the budding internet age. And then it just kept sitting there, growing. More games released and more games released, and the library of Steam just kept getting bigger, and people in the media just kept being fine with it, assuming everything was perfectly okay. It's good guy Steam and good guy Gabe, what could possibly go wrong? Every time a new launcher was released by a company wanting to avoid the revenue cut from Steam, it was met with massive backlash from both the fans and the media, because they didn't want more launchers, they just wanted Steam. And it just kept sitting there and taking up more and more of the online gaming real estate. Eventually, due to the size and pure player base of Steam, indie developers started facing no other choice than to go with it, taking the quote-unquote industry standard 30-70 revenue split, where 70% goes to the developers for the years of hard work they put into the game, and 30% goes to Steam for hosting it and sitting there. Because for the longest time, it was really the only option. Gabe was able to sit on his pile of games and good reputation like a dragon resting on his pile of money. Much like a YouTuber who abandons their main channel in order to do a podcast full time, Valve has built up enough goodwill to ditch what made them so beloved in the first place. And because of their practical monopoly on online gaming, they've been able to get away with scummy business practices just because there's not many other options. For example, a user in 2015 bought a game and didn't realize that it had the third-party DRM software Uplay attached to it. He wanted to refund it and did so within the 14-day and less than 2-hour game time requirement that Steam had. In fact, he did it literally the next day. However, Steam refused to acknowledge his request, functionally denying him a refund. This is explicitly against European law, as the user points out, and asks people for advice on how to proceed. Instead of helping out on the grounds that the user was objectively correct, they instead blamed him for not reading the warning ahead of time, something that doesn't matter because it is their legal right to a refund. Quoting the article that talks about this, Good Guy Valve quickly came up with a solution, an entirely new EULA custom made for the good gamers of the European Union, which specifically acknowledges that they have a legal right to a refund, and then immediately forces them to waive it if they want to purchase the game. A lawsuit was filed about exactly this refund issue in Australia a year before this post, a definite reason Valve might have corrected the EU one so quickly. This lawsuit went on for 18 months, where Steam was forced to disclose its financial records among other things. In a last-ditch effort to avoid that from happening, Steam did the legal version of begging, arguing in court that, if Valve's private financial information is made public, Valve submits that it could make negotiations with potential business partners more difficult. What they're saying there is that if companies negotiating with Steam for something like, Steam's share of the profits from their game, knowing how ridiculously lucrative Steam is would make the company go, hey, you don't need this fucking money. Because Steam, and I want to say this again, got 30% of revenue for over a decade for just hosting games on it. Also, you should really read the judge's dismissal of that argument, it is fucking hilarious. The sources are in a document in the description, go check it out. But all of this build-up culminated in the release of the Epic Games launcher. See, unlike most other video game launchers that publishers use just to avoid the cost of putting games on Steam, Epic Games decided to fight. Emboldened by the wild and continued success of Fortnite, they decided to release the Epic Games Store, a storefront for un-Epic games that directly competed against Steam. Now I'll say, in fairness, the Epic Games Store has a ton of features missing that Steam has had for a number of years. But also, in fairness, Epic Games only takes 12% of the profits from developers. So when these people, who have spent years developing a video game, are given the choice of releasing on Steam and Epic, or releasing exclusively on Epic, especially with a possibly very nice bonus in the contract, developers went to the store that paid them better. Because that's competition, something Steam has essentially never had to deal with. That's not to mention that Epic Games doesn't force DRM and literally gives away games for free, very smart tactics to pull people over to their side. And in response to this genuine threat, Steam and Valve have been forced to actually change some things. One big thing among them being that Steam has reduced how much money they take from developers. But only down to 20%, and only if the game gets more than 50 million in sales. However, that is still massive, because Steam, the unwavering monolith of the online gaming scene, was forced to budge an inch. And so long as Epic Games is a thorn in their side, they'll have to continue making concessions, because that's what competition does. Until they budge a lot more though, I'll have to award Valve with the prestigious sin of sloth. You know who isn't lazy though? Rockstar Games, baby! In fact, maybe a little too not lazy even. Now you might ask, what do you mean too not lazy? And what I mean is, Rockstar Games has a bit of a problem. Their games are generally massive, having potentially hundreds of hours of content to make and tons of polish to slather all over it. Such a thing takes quite a bit of manpower, even for things that might seem tiny. I'll be borrowing a lot from this article by Jason Schreier. It's a pretty good read, but I'll summarize it for you. As the premiere of Red Dead Redemption 2 crept ever closer, the release date less than a year away, the game's top directors decided that black bars would make the cutscenes in the game feel a lot more cinematic. Everyone was in agreement that it would add to the game, but here's the thing. A change as small as that would add weeks to the game's development. You can't just slap black bars on all the cutscenes. You have to redo all of them in the brand new aspect ratio in order to make sure everything's framed correctly, and there are a ton of cutscenes in the game. Issue is, RDR2's release date had already been publicly delayed twice before then, and they couldn't afford to do it again. So with all the stuff they already had to do before release, and stuck between a rock and just not fucking doing it, the directors made an executive decision. It's time for the crunch. Now, Red Dead 2 was in development for 8 straight years, so the employees working on the black bars already knew the routine at this point. The directors, over the years, have already made massive changes to the game's plot, mechanics, ambiance, every part of the game's DNA. These changes undo hundreds of hours of work that the employees then need to do over again. Now, it's reasonable to expect things like that when making the type of games that Rockstar does. Having 2 or 3 week-long stretches where employees need to work longer hours is common in a lot of industries, but that's not what's happening here. According to dozens of employees in every part of the company, Rockstar's crunch times regularly last anywhere from months to years. After a story broke about creative director Dan Houser describing 100-hour work weeks taken somewhat out of context, public outrage around Rockstar prompted the company to allow employees to speak with journalists about it. But strangely, the vast majority of the 34 employees that spoke to Kotaku decided to remain anonymous, fearing retaliation from the company. Now, the 100-hour workweek quote was blown out of proportion. No employees said that they've worked that many hours in a week. However, they all reported averages of 55 to 60-hour work weeks. That is 6 10-hour-long days of work on average, many employees of which did not get any overtime pay for. Some get paid hourly, but many employees are salaried for an expected 40 hours, and end up giving an average of 15 to 20 hours of free labor to Rockstar every single week of their lives. A number of these human beings spoke candidly to Kotaku about relationships that were destroyed, mental breakdowns, and heavy drinking while at work. Stories that Kotaku couldn't get into the details of, at fear of revealing who was speaking to them, because Rockstar would retaliate. Some employees, to be fair, talked about the company being great aside from the long hours, but the undeniable fact is that human beings aren't built for such crunch times. But the directors don't care. They will consume people's personal lives, waste their time and money and labor hours, and overwhelm people with work, all to add some fucking black bars. So in honor of Rockstar's relentless disregard for their people's well-being, I will gladly award them the sin of wrath.
Ooh.
I want to play a little game. What do the developers Rare, Bungie, and Lionhead Studios have in common? That's right, they were all consumed by the Goliath that is Microsoft. Everyone, behold the company that has bought out and merged with so many other companies that it needs its own dedicated Wikipedia page. And among the graveyard of formerly budding companies lays quite a few beloved game studios. However, Microsoft doesn't kill them, necessarily, so let's check in on those studios I mentioned and see how they're doing. Rare was one of the oldest and most infamous buyouts by Microsoft, but in fairness, Rare was looking to get bought. Development costs for the games were growing, and even though their decade-long partnership with Nintendo was going decently well, for whatever reason, Nintendo didn't seem interested in actually buying the studio. Eventually, Microsoft offered $375 million, beating out Activision, another company interested in Rare. And once Microsoft finally acquired Rare, they didn't do much with them. Like, they ported a ton of games, even some Nintendo games still despite their deal being over, but they couldn't make any new games with Nintendo's IPs. However, they were able to keep all of their original series, like Banjo and Conker, and then they did fucking nothing with them. They released Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, not a new addition to the main series, instead a vehicle builder game. As for Conker's Bad Fur Day, they released a remake of it called Conker Live and Reloaded and then never touched it again. They really only released 3 games total that are of any amount of importance in the 19 years since the acquisition. Perfect Dark, a launch title for the Xbox 360 in 2007, Killer Instinct, the 3rd addition to the decently popular fighting game series, and finally Sea of Thieves in 2018, a pretty good and unique multiplayer pirate game. Oh, and don't forget Rare Replay, a collection of all the iconic game series that Microsoft shot in the kneecap in 2002. So, not great for Rare. Let's check in on the next one. Bungie's story with Microsoft is pretty infamous and still pretty relevant, but I'll go through it in case you don't know. After the success of the Halo games and Bungie's rapid rise to stardom, it was bought out by Microsoft on June 19th of the year of our Lord 2000. Now, while operating under Microsoft, there were actually no real issues. They released Halo 3, a game that made $170 million in sales in the first 24 hours of release, and is still the most beloved game in the entire franchise. Halo Reach is better though. The issue actually began once Bungie and Microsoft decided to part ways. See, even though Bungie got out of the Goliath, they had to lose the very thing that they loved most, Halo. As a part of that split, Microsoft kept the intellectual property rights to Halo, and after Halo Reach released, Bungie had no more involvement in the series. And, subjectively, the series immediately got worse. But objectively, the fan base widely believes that 343 Studios had produced shit games in comparison to Bungie. This entire story, too, had a truly disgusting cap off to the end of it, as with the recent release of Halo Infinite, the series has gone full corporate, Battle Pass and all. So, that's great. And lastly, Lionhead was a studio almost entirely known for their Fable series, a series of action role-playing games. And long story short, 10 years after the acquisition from Microsoft, it closed. Entirely. It's almost like Microsoft is this bloated fat neckbeard, consuming beloved studios and digesting everything good that they were known for, and then forcing them to shit out games for old fans of the series to eat up. And for this gross indulgence, I would like to award Microsoft with the prestigious sin of gluttony. In the August of 2014, a playable trailer for the upcoming Silent Hill game was released at the PlayStation Store. The game was simply called PT, and followed a man looping downwards through a repeating hallway that changed every time a puzzle was solved. When it released, the game essentially went mega viral, with every single YouTuber on Earth trying to get the shit scared out of him. It is truly difficult to measure just how influential this game was to the horror game scene and gaming as a whole. However, as you all might know, that Silent Hills game that it was a trailer for never actually came out, and PT was removed from the PlayStation Store just a few months later. Konami, to this day, has never given an official explanation as to why they cancelled Silent Hills and removed PT, but they most certainly doubled down on that lack of explanation when they forced gaming's darling child Hideo Kojima out of the company. The things I'll be talking about in this section were covered excellently by YouTuber The Great Debate in 2019, but I'll be cutting the information down from 30 minutes to a few. If you want to look into it further, watch that video. Anyways, Konami, since its genesis, has always been a decently sizable company. It was formed in 1969 and started as a jukebox rental and repair business before transitioning to an arcade cabinet maker in 1978. They made a number of now iconic arcade games, most notably Frogger, but also Super Cobra, Time Pilot, Track and Field, and more. After the release of the Atari, they produced a couple games for it, but their first massive success with home consoles came with the NES. They began several iconic series like Contra, Castlevania, and most notably Metal Gear, as well as producing some licensed products like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. As time went on, Konami opened a number of branches all over the globe, including Kojima Productions, led by Hideo Kojima, and producing some of the most iconic games the company has ever released. That's not even to mention Konami being the company behind Yu-Gi-Oh!, one of the most popular trading card games of all time. Yet, despite all of this, by the time the 2010s came around, Konami wasn't as big as their contemporaries. Despite being widely known and being one of the oldest video game companies in existence, their revenues were dwarfed compared to companies like EA or Nintendo. They just weren't big enough. One of the possible reasons for this is that even though a ridiculous amount of Konami's success can be attributed to Hideo Kojima, his games cost a lot of money to produce and take a lot of time to make. And while Konami tolerated his quirks while he was their best asset, someone new came into the mix. His name is Hideki Hayakawa, and his plan is mobile games. After a meteoric rise in the company, his efforts produced a number of products including Dragon Collection. This game was very low cost to make and racked in bonkers money, reported to be around $1 million a day. Compared to the cost of Kojima's efforts, Konami saw itself faced with a conflict. Despite their darling child, despite their long history, despite their prestige, they weren't as successful as the others. A question formed in the minds of the higher-ups. Why can't we be like them? Kojima, being the well-respected and longtime leader of the industry, saw these mobile games as the garbage they are, and was in constant conflict with Hayakawa. Over time, Kojima started to get demoted in the company while its enemy only continued to rise. And all of this tension between Kojima, Hayakawa, and Konami came to a head with the release and destruction of PT. Despite the pure virality of the trailer, despite the ever-growing hype that Kojima always seemed to generate, and despite the long line of success that the relationship between Konami and Kojima produced, on October 9th, 2015, Hideo Kojima had officially been split from the company he's been with for over a decade. And the message that Konami gave the world leading up to this event is incredibly telling. We will pursue mobile games aggressively. Our main platform will be mobiles, following the pay-as-you-play model of games like Power Pro and Winning 11 with additional content. Our games must move from selling things like items
to fix it up, you can turn it into a thriving community. You can make friendships and form relationships along the way and create something beautiful. Or you can support the Joja Mart, the lifeless corporation that's causing Pelican Town so much grief to begin with. Or so you may think at first glance. More on that in a bit. As you upgrade your farm and abilities, you begin to collect different resources that you can then throw into the community center to complete the repairs and progress in the game, unlocking new perks as you go. If you decide to follow this path, which is what most people do, the progression is very logical and the game is extremely rewarding. It's a big part of how the game works, and it's the next thing that I want to talk about. When you come into Pelican Town, everything is pretty much in shambles. The bus is broken, the minecart doesn't work, and there are 2 bridges that have fallen into disrepair, and pretty much everything is going downhill. If you donate items to the community center and fill up the various bundles of items that you get as you progress through the game, you can fix these things and bring the town to its former glory. It's by far my favorite way to play through the game, and it sets goals that you work to accomplish along the way. But after a couple playthroughs, I figured that you may want to step back and ask yourself, why is the town so bad in the first place? How did Pelican Town's infrastructure become so obsolete? What is the mayor doing with the town taxes? Well, my friend, now for your first dilemma. The game makes you assume that the guy who looks like the bad guy is, well, the bad guy. And you hear this from the perspective of the mayor and from the general store owner named Pierre. And why do you think Pierre says he's bad? Well, because he's the competition, and it's hurting the only thing that Pierre cares about. His profits. But these themes that I mentioned are themes that you could dive into further if you decide to, but who cares because more stinks and the community center is way cooler. That's the story, and like I said, it creates the foundation for the rest of the game and encourages you to do the things that you do. But what exactly do you do? There are 4 seasons in the game, and it constantly cycles between them as time goes on. The main focus of the game is going to be your farm, and in each season, you can grow season-specific crops that all have different properties. There's a total of over 50 plantable and harvestable crops and fruit trees, and the amount of money you make depends heavily on what you decide to grow. This large range of items can really change up your gameplay experience, and you can strategize to grow things that will help you reach your goals. Yeah, you can grow the crops themselves to sell, but you can also use them as part of your overall strategy. For example, you can grow the fairy rose next to a beehive to make a rare and expensive form of honey. Or you can grow grapes to make wine and poppies to make, decorative floral arrangements. I found myself trying to plan out my farm to be both productive and to look good. There's something so appealing about having a nice looking farm that makes you a lot of money, and I love the process of trying out new crops to see how they look and how much money they make me. On top of all the crops, there are quite a few different animals and facilities to deepen the farming experience even further. You can raise chickens that you forget to feed, or cows that you forget to feed, or even ostriches that you also forget to feed. Then, adding another layer, you can take the products produced by these animals and combine them with other farmed or foraged ingredients to make food dishes or specialty products like mayonnaise. These other facilities are quite important, especially when winter rolls around and you're dying of boredom due to a lack of farming. And finally, when it comes to farming, there are a lot of different tools that you can use in advance to make the experience smoother. For example, in the beginning of the game, you have to manually water all of your plants every day like you live in rural Vietnam, but as you gain money and levels, you can get sprinkler systems that do all of the work for you. These various crops, animals, and upgrades makes for a very in-depth farming experience that gives you a near infinite amount of enjoyment in a simple and easy to comprehend package. While farming is usually a majority of your focus, you really only have to plan, prepare, and then wait.
How interesting is
Other
Stardew
than the
Valley?
occasional watering and
Is there
harvesting,
lots to do in
farming
the
doesn't
game?
take up a lot of time.
Animal
And
Crossing?
time is something that's very important in
you know?
Stardew Valley. You see, the game goes in a cycle of days. Every night you go to sleep and the game summarizes what all you accomplished that day. Then you wake up and start over in the morning. As the days pass, the seasons change and it ties in directly with what you're doing on your farm and around Pelican Town. I often would start the day by farming and watering my plants, and then I would go into town, talk to some of the NPCs to build up my relationships with them, and then head over to the mines to fight monsters or go over to the ocean to catch some fish. You have to hop between activities to accomplish your goals before the season ends, and every minute of your day is important. In theory, this may sound a bit daunting and stressful, but remember, there aren't any pressing goals in this game. You can either rush to rebuild the community center and beat the game, or you can take your time and enjoy the process, which is often what I found myself doing. It's a relaxing and calming experience, and rushing it to reach some meaningless goal takes away from what the game is meant to be. So take your time, take a step back, and enjoy planning your farm, meeting new people, and exploring the world of Stardew Valley. One of my favorite things about Animal Crossing is the ability to collect all of the items on the island. It's always extremely satisfying to see how far I've progressed, how many bugs I've caught, and what's still out there awaiting discovery. But Stardew Valley does this even better than Animal Crossing, and it makes trying to discover all of the potential crops, fish, resources, and artifacts around the island an extremely rewarding experience. When you find a mineral or artifact that you don't know anything about, you can take it to the museum and put it on display on the shelf. As you get more items, Gunther will give you little rewards like decorations, and you can walk in at any time to see your collection grow. I always tried extremely hard to find more artifacts when I played Stardew. Every time I got a new resource that I hadn't yet discovered, I would set it aside and take it to the museum as soon as possible. It was one of the most satisfying parts of the game for me. While the museum holds the minerals and artifacts, there's also a catalog to track everything else that you find along the way. You can see how many of the 60 plus fish you've managed to catch, or how many of the countless food recipes you've made in your overpriced kitchen. And on top of this, the catalog goes quite well with the community center. You can easily see which items you need in order to fill up the remaining bundles and repair the broken facilities around the center. It all flows really well and makes for a super unique experience that keeps you interested in the world of Stardew Valley. Now, I know the suspense has been killing you. What the hell's going on with the Rock Eater, or the guy who behaves like a jar of mayonnaise when you give him a gift? Or the corrupt mayor, or the homeless man who gets sympathy for digging in the trash while I get yelled at for doing the same thing. The characters in Stardew Valley are the best part of the game. If you wanted to farm, you could go play Minecraft or Farming Simulator, or any other game with farming. People play Stardew to fulfill their dreams of wifing up a weird-ass e-girl that eats rocks, or befriending a grumpy old man in a wheelchair. It's much different. Each of the villagers in Pelican Town and the various characters that you meet while playing the game are super unique, each with their own personalities and quirks. There are different benefits to befriending different people, and everyone does their own thing throughout the day. The game feels truly alive, and it seems like all of these villagers would continue to live their lives even if you weren't there. I love walking around the town and seeing what everybody has going on in their lives and seeing what they want to talk about. I like when I go to the mines and get to interact with Linus, who I'm trying way too freaking hard to befriend after I accidentally was a jerk to him early in my playthrough. You can gain hearts with each of these characters and increase your friendship level by giving them gifts, completing quests, giving them more gifts, and oh my god, why do these people need so many things to become friends with you? One of the best parts of the game, and one of the reasons why so many people love it, is the romance system. Say you're getting a bit lonely on the farm and you want some company and free items on a regular basis. Well, go get married. Once you reach an 8 heart level with a single character, you can give them a bouquet of flowers and show your romantic interest in them. When you reach 10 hearts, you can propose and get married. They then move in with you and you can have kids and wallow in the misery of marriage on a daily basis. There are 6 dudes and 6 girls who are single characters in the game, and you can pursue any or all of them if you're interested. Speaking of which, if you've ever played Stardew, who do you think the best romanceable character is? My friends and I were having an argument about it, and I want to see what everyone thinks, so drop a comment below with your reasoning. Everything that I've mentioned so far is a lot of fun on its own, but it's 10 times better when you're doing it with up to 3 of your best friends.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The game has an outstanding multiplayer feature where you all share a farm and work together to bring Pelican Town back to its former glory. It takes the amazing single player experience and expands it directly into multiplayer for it to be enjoyed as a group. Some of my favorite memories in this game are the ones where my friends and I are just goofing off and trying our best to make things work without a real goal or focus whatsoever.
What
I
was
thought
that?
it only blew up certain things.
Both solo and with friends, you could easily get hundreds of hours out of the vanilla version of the game. But raise that number to infinity once you add the modding and community found in Stardew Valley. This game has one of the best communities out of any game I've ever played. The memes on Reddit are hilarious, and everyone seems to be at a common consensus of what Stardew Valley has accomplished and how it's changed indie games forever. This is compounded when the modding comes into play. The game has full modding capabilities, so there's everything from item spawners to overhauls to anime mods, and there's even one that reskins horses to look like cats. It's amazing, and the mods allow for countless ways to customize the game to your liking. Stardew Valley is a once-in-a-decade indie game experience. It's given Eric Barone an outstanding reputation in the indie game community, and it's had an impact on countless people's lives. A lot of reviews mention people going through things and how this game helped them to deal with reality. And I could totally see it. It's one of those games that has a lot of charm behind every aspect of it. So if you haven't played Stardew Valley, I definitely recommend checking it out because it's 1000% worth the price. Also, while I'm on the topic, check out my last video talking about meaningful games to see some of the other games that make you think about life or that could help you get through things. I'll put a link in the description below. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. Do you play Stardew Valley? If so, what do you think of it? Is it one of your
Interesting video. Gaben? That looks insane. Fuck. The fuck? This is insane. What the hell? This is like arms and everything. Dude, he has so much stuff. So it's guarded. Dude. Stop playing officially. No, not playing. Oh, I want to get a capture. Like Nintendo Switch games. Hmm. Interesting. Games. Games.
There is just too much. Like, it's actually getting ridiculous at this point. There are just way too many games to play. But there's also, like, nothing to play. I have such a big metaphorical pile of games that I want to get to. Games that I want to spend more time with. Games that I want to finish. And most of all, games that I haven't even started yet. So why is it when I sit down to play something, I stare blankly at my library of, like, hundreds of games and feel like there's actually nothing. Most of these games I have consciously bought or downloaded at some point or another, so I definitely want to give them all a try at the very least. And despite the ever-growing pile of games that I need to get to, the ever-growing backlog, I'm still just gonna start a new Minecraft world. I think a trap I fall into is waiting for the perfect mood to play a game.
Oh, that's real.
Especially when it's one I know I should enjoy. I bought Hotline Miami for dirt cheap, even cheaper, apparently, on Steam about 2 Black Fridays ago. Everything about Hotline Miami seemed like 5 kilometers up my alley, and so my expectations were set pretty high. And to make sure I got the maximum possible amount of enjoyment out of this game, I didn't play it for a really long time as I waited for the Hotline Miami mood to finally hit. I have done this with so many games at this point, like it's actually stupid. The idea of waiting for the perfect mood for a game is 95% of the time just pure procrastination and a waste of time. That remaining 5% of the time, however,
Hello, chat. Good morning. It's been a week, bro. It's been 1 week. It tilts me. Like you.
Oh, I think this is where we part ways. I'm gonna call it a night here because I'm getting pretty freaking tired. I think I can finally fall asleep now. Me too, because job interview tomorrow or later today at 3:30 p.m. I'm so broke right now. It's actually crazy, but whatever. But yeah, I'm gonna end here. So, if anybody is lurking or something, or if you see this in a VOD somewhere or something, just knocked you out. How about that? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, gonna go to bed. So good night, good morning, good evening, whenever you watch this. Watching it right now, good night. So, yeah, I think that's it for me for today. See you guys in the next stream. Bye-bye.